guide, and a caregiver. He travels frequently, giving invited presentations and workshops at universities, corporate events, community, yoga, and cultural centers. And we are so happy to have him here with us today. So thank you. I'll hand it over to you.
Hare Krishna. Everyone wants to be happy, but somehow life is difficult. That's our topic. And it's a nice topic. I understand these topics were selected by all of you. There was a brainstorming list at the beginning of the semester, and this was one of them. How to learn to be happy. Well, I think something most of you are familiar with is Matrix, the red pill or the blue pill. Which one do you want? Because either one that you want, it has something to do with happiness. And that essence of happiness is our whole being, as you see from this image. There's body, mind, and intelligence, the different parts of a pyramid or triangle. And at the center of everything is spiritual. It holds everything together. So that is to say, we're going to take a little bit of a holistic approach, because all parts of those elements have something to do with what people think is happiness. But that which drives the machine is that little skinny guy there in the middle, the spirit soul. That's what real happiness is resting upon, and searching for any of the other limited happinesses doesn't result in happiness. Here's an image, nice artistic drawing of the feature of Maya. Many of you know what Maya means. It's two syllables, ma, ya, not this. It's accepting that which isn't to be what is, and that which is to be what isn't. That's the diluting influence of Maya. At the center of that painting, you'll see three personalities. You can't distinguish them so well, but they're the personalities who are presiding over the modes of nature. I assume most of you have some familiarity with Bhagavad Gita. And according to Bhagavad Gita, this material nature is moved by those three modes. And they're all part of this larger entity or personality or force acting on our life, the force of Maya. Look down in the lower left corner, you'll see that little embryo child in the womb. And then there's the whole of creation all around. The Maya is acting, illusory potency is acting on everyone at all times. So go back to that prior image, this pyramid of, or holistic picture of who we are, and we can be influenced by this material energy or by the spiritual energy. And real happiness, guess what? It's in the realm of the spiritual energy. Here's a nice painting illustrating a verse from Uddhava Gita. Again, most of you know Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita spoken by Krishna to Arjuna. This Uddhava Gita is similarly several chapters long, and it's found in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. This is the very first verse of that section. So those of you that want to understand knowledge and detachment from illusion, it's a really fantastic section to read over. I'll just read the first verse's translation. A conditioned soul undergoes great trouble to obtain a little happiness. After struggling in material life, which is full of hardship and hypocrisy, one may receive a little sense gratification, but this illusory pleasure in no way offsets the burden of suffering one must bear to obtain it. That's Krishna speaking to his dear devotee Uddhava, just like his dear friend is Arjuna. Uddhava is also immediate relative and so forth. So that, the classic, the donkey chasing the carrot. The carrot is that little happiness. And illusory life is searching for illusory, flickering, limited pleasure, and it's gone. The sensation of pleasure is gone, and then one is hankering for the next and the next and the next. So later in that same chapter, here's an image showing a forest, and you look carefully down at the bottom left, you'll see a sword. A sword. And the sword is indicating the sword of knowledge. And the sword of knowledge cuts the attachment. Here's the text spoken by Krishna. The network of material desires is created when one falsely thinks that he can establish himself permanently in the material world. This binding network should be cut by the sword of knowledge. Otherwise, one will be forced to wander in the illusory network of Maya. And this is blocking. How do we get this out of the way? With no understanding of liberated life on the spiritual platform. So the message here is knowledge and detachment. Why is it difficult? Because of ignorance. And the antidote for ignorance is knowledge. And knowledge doesn't just mean an MA, PhD, or some degree. Knowledge is spiritual knowledge, and with spiritual knowledge comes detachment. So as long as there's it's just very simple sutras. As long as there's attachment, there will be suffering. Well, take a look at it, and through knowledge, one can cut the attachment. It doesn't cut your existence or the stuff around you, but the attachment to the stuff around you, finding happiness in the stuff around you. That's the sword of knowledge that brings detachment. Many of you know the principle of Buddhism. And if not, I'll just remind you. The principle of Buddhism is the root cause of suffering is what? Root cause of suffering is desire. The Vedic picture is different. The root cause of suffering is ignorance. Ignorance influences desire to be ignorant desire. And with ignorant desire, then there's ignorant activity, comes suffering. Therefore, this statement, this is Krishna speaking, material desire, that's ignorant desire, is undoubtedly the cause of the greatest unhappiness, and freedom from such desire is the cause of the greatest happiness. There's the bird that's been let out of the cage being material desire, and material desire being the cause of the greatest unhappiness. So why is life difficult? That's the first half of this assignment this evening. Why is life difficult? Because of ignorance. What's the solution? Knowledge. What's the result of knowledge? Detachment and the greatest happiness. Now, that's the doorway to the greatest happiness. Now, what's the greatest happiness? Let's take a look and see what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita about the greatest happiness. I'm assuming if I'm incorrect, you can correct me, but there's some basic knowledge of Bhagavad Gita from the audience here. From chapter 5, a liberated person is not attracted to material sense pleasure, but is always in trance, enjoying the pleasure within. In this way, the self-realized person enjoys unlimited happiness, for he concentrates on the Supreme. So how to find real happiness? Concentrate upon the Supreme. And that means withdrawing the enjoying spirit from the temporary. And the path for doing that is the path of yoga. Of course, there's different forms of yoga, or there's a yoga ladder, just like the place where I'm sitting. Right across from where I'm sitting, besides the camera, on the other side of the camera is a stairway. And there's steps going up to another floor above us. So the yoga system is like a ladder that leads from one to the next stage of the same. Finding unlimited happiness within by letting go of ignorant desire or material desire, in putting in its place transcendental or spiritual desire, that's desire in relation to that little spark of life that you saw in the earlier slide, the pyramid slide, the soul. And there's a way to make that spiritual connection. That's the yoga system. Different forms and expressions of yoga to reach that. This is chapter 5 in your Bhagavad Gita. Later you can look it up. Nice verse. Now we're going to go to chapter 6, where it goes a little deeper. Krishna describes seeing the self by the pure mind and to relish and rejoice in the self. That's describing a certain type of yoga, meditation, dhyan yoga. In that joyous state, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness, realized through transcendental senses. Established thus, one never departs from the truth, and upon gaining this, he thinks there is no greater gain. Being situated in such a position, one is never shaken, even in the midst of the greatest difficulty. This is indeed actual freedom from all miseries arising from material contact. So why is life difficult? Material contact? Well, it's not exactly material contact, but it's the desire to be the enjoyer of those objects in which we're in contact, or ones we're not yet in contact with, and we're hoping to get some of that. It's material desire. And there's miseries and struggles that arise from that material contact. Now, I really like this verse, particularly, one is never shaken even in the midst of greatest difficulty. That's yoga. And won't take too long to start to list. We could ask the people to volunteer. What are some difficulties that you're experiencing, or people around you or those dear to you are experiencing? And I've got a long list of people around me that are experiencing difficulties, abundant difficulties, and different stages of different kinds, different phases of life, different. But some of it's really severe. Some of it's really, really severe. And some of it's getting there. And it's just, it happens. Even there's difficulty by material contact because we don't belong here. A classic. You take a fish out of water. That's natural for them. Take the fish out of water, give them a new computer, give them a television set, give them sunglasses and lemonade and a hammock. Are they going to be happy? Or whatever might be considered, comforts. They're going to be happy when they're in their natural atmosphere and not otherwise. So what's our natural atmosphere? Similarly, what's our natural atmosphere? The natural atmosphere is within or on the spiritual plane of consciousness. And when one is on the plane of spiritual consciousness, then one can be in the world and never shaken by even the greatest difficulty, because you're situated in knowing who you are. I like sharing this. I'll share with you all. There's a recent film about Prabhupada's life, and Partha can clue you how you can find that online. Really nice film. And one section that sticks out in my mind is there was a television show, and the reporter was sitting in his television studio, and nice man saying, Swamiji, speaking to Prabhupada, you come to America and you must have come here to give a message. What's that message you'd like to give to our listening audience? 3 words. Know yourself. Those 2 words. Know yourself. The reporter said, know yourself. Prabhupada looked at the man and said, yes, I want the people should know them, who they are. Know yourself. Because this know yourself is a short way of saying what's on your screen here. We're not part of this material creation. We're not meant for being enjoyers of that which is a foreign atmosphere to us. Because we're spiritual entities, we're meant to be in a spiritual atmosphere, but here we are in the atmosphere of the temporary and limited. Now you see it, now you're chasing it, now you've got it, now it's gone. Whatever that lapse of time might be. Unfortunately, people are prone to greed. And the objects of the senses, this is language of Bhagavad Gita. If you like Sanskrit, it's tanmatra. The objects of the senses are meant for my pleasure. So here we are on planet Earth, wanting happiness, and what happens? People take more than what they need. And that greed has problems. It has problems for Earth, and it has problems for the people on the planet Earth. As you know, today is Earth Day. I was asked to speak something about Earth Day. So Earth Day is for people who know how to find happiness within. When you find happiness within, it doesn't mean you tune out the world around you, but you engage in the world around you in a way that's harmonious and respectful to Mother Nature and all the resources of nature. You accept that which is naturally suited for your well-being or your maintenance, your upkeep. So the view that know what's in Prabhupada's books, I'm just paraphrasing the first verse of Ishopanishad. Earth Day is a paraphrase of the first verse of Ishopanishad. If you don't have a copy of Ishopanishad, ask Partha and he'll tell you how to find it online. Each of us have, the arrangement is made for our necessities. Earth Day is meaning being respectful to those resources, accepting those things as it's necessary for our maintenance, and not exploiting otherwise, as that greed picture shows, because that's abundant. When people don't have that inner contentment, they're searching for happiness outside. And when they're searching for happiness outside, that's the cause of all suffering, the greatest unhappiness. And when you find the happiness within, then naturally you're very peaceful and acting appropriately with the sources of nature. And what helps most of all in awakening that spiritual consciousness is this practice of meditation, specifically sound vibration meditation. And I'm sure you've heard it multiple times, so no harm to have you hear it again. You see on your screen the Maha Mantra, specifically suited for this age, for delivering our consciousness from its allure to the temporary, and instead finding happiness within through cleansing that covered tendency, the Maya tendency, and awakening a natural state of consciousness where happiness is within, and then we're interacting with the world around us and people around us and everything in a way that's suitable for civilized life and progressive spiritual consciousness life. It's not difficult when there's knowledge. So we'll do it one more time. And that's it for this evening. We'll spend some time with discussion. We'll go back to the first slide. Why is life difficult? It's difficult because of ignorance. The form of ignorance is accepting that which is not to be what is, and that which is to be what is not. That's ignorance. And the antidote for ignorance is knowledge. And with the sword of knowledge, one can cut. This is how do I learn to be happy? With the sword of knowledge, one can learn to cut the foolish attachment to chasing after limited and temporary happiness through senses, contacting sense objects, and getting a buzz that says, happiness. I mean, it's a little bit like what we went through to be with you this evening. We were in a car, and sure enough, a lot of traffic. Sure enough, a lot of traffic. So I contacted Partha. I said, we may be late. And no, fortunately, I practice yoga for a long time, more than 40 years, more than 50 years. So I'm sitting there thinking, I better let Partha know that we may be a little late. And as soon as the traffic cleared, there was this happiness instead of distress. I mean, here we are anyways. He was fine. We're here. But sometimes you're not going to make it to your destination, and then it's not. Perhaps you followed through with somebody that contracted COVID and watched the up and down and what they have to go through and how much pain they can't breathe and this and that. I mean, try not breathing for a while. I mean, not just holding your breath, but you can't breathe. You can't get oxygen. That's what's going on with some of these people that have, an increasing case of COVID. So where's the I'll share something with you. Way back in the early, March, April of 2020, it was ravaging through parts of Europe, COVID. And older people were affected most quickly. In Italy, there's a large number of old people. So it really swept through northern Italy because a lot of older people live there. One man, I don't know if the story is true, but reportedly he had to be put on a ventilator. He survived. At the end, the doctor came to visit him and congratulated him for pulling through, and they were going to release him from the hospital. And they handed him the ventilator bill. And the man started crying. And the doctor said, it's not that much. And, I know it's a lot, but it's, you can pay it off in time. And he was trying to pacify the patient. The patient said, I can cover the cost of the ventilator, but what about that I've not paid a cent for all the air and oxygen that I've had for so many 90 years of my life. I've been receiving without a grateful heart and making no payment to God for the air that I believe in. So being happy isn't just the misery subsides, the traffic jam breaks, or the health condition starts to improve a little bit so you can breathe again, or whatever it is that one is going through. There's always something. The real position of learning to be happy is learning to find who you are, the spirit soul within this holistic picture of self. We have a body. Happiness isn't just senses of the body reaching sense objects and going, ah. Or unhappiness is going, oh no. That's the wrong standard of happiness. Happiness is not on the mental platform, just philosophy or something creative in the mind or something, or even strong intellect. It's insufficient. It's the spirit soul within has to be connected with. Of course, you're with a spiritual organization, so you know that in principle. Then it's finding methods. Bhagavad Gita has those methods. I made mention of the Bhagavatam having its message of knowledge and detachment, Srimad Bhagavatam, knowledge and detachment to reach who you really are. And when you're connected with who you really are, there's a happiness that can withstand even the greatest difficulty. You won't depart from that truth because it's who you are. And that's the standard of real happiness. That's where ignorance is gone. The world around you is there. You engage with it in respectful, appropriate manners. Earth Day being a nice example of people who want others to respect Earth and interact with the resources of Earth in a respectful manner. But that all rests on our spiritual identity. So the yoga system connecting with our spiritual identity is the path for learning to be really happy. There's a summary of our talk this evening. Let's see if there's some Partha, whatever you want to do here. You want to have people unmute, or you want people to send in their questions?
I think those who have questions, they can unmute themselves and speak.
Partha, can I ask a question?
Please go ahead. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Swamiji, thank you very much for the presentation, and thank you very much for this session. I feel really privileged to be listening to this, especially after listening to a lot of YouTube videos that you post regularly. So thank you very much again for those as well. The question I have is, when you say spirit soul, what do you exactly mean? Does spirit soul have personality? And why should we identify with spirit soul? Thank you.
The spirit soul not only has personality, spirit soul has everything. Sat, Chit, Ananda, Vigraha, eternity, knowledge, bliss, and spiritual form, and spiritual relationship with other spiritual forms, starting with and centered around the supreme spiritual person. And so there's many things to say about what the spirit soul is. It's, in short, it's who we are. Here's a really nice example. In the life of Narada Muni, I'll assume you know who Narada Muni is. Narada Muni is describing to his disciple Vyasadeva, that's how elevated Narada Muni is. He has Vyasadeva as his disciple. He's describing about his previous life. And in his previous life, he was born a very simple boy, who his mother was just serving people at an inn, or like a dharmshala, a little place where people go who are on spiritual pilgrimage. And he served some elevated personalities during the 4 months of the rainy season, and through that association and service and so forth, and hearing from them, he became moved spiritually. And they saw how he was moved, and they gave him special teachings of how he could perform a certain practice, even as a little boy, and become spiritually elevated. At the end of that rainy season, 4 months, they departed, and he spent the rest of his life doing what they had taught. There's further details, but at a certain stage, just traveling here and there, no fixed residence. And every evening he would sit under a tree and perform his meditation. And one time when meditating on the Supreme Lord, he saw the Supreme Lord. And then suddenly the Lord disappeared and instructed him, normally I don't show myself until one has become matured, but to encourage you, I've shown you my form, and I encourage you to continue like this for the rest of your life, and you will come to me. He heard that voice, and he lived his life that way. And when he came to the end of his life, just as the soul was leaving the body, the spiritual form of Narada Muni evolved from, or rose from, that body. So that's who he was through his whole life. It just had the dress or the covering was something else. He was a traveling mendicant. But his real identity is a perfectly realized, highly illuminated spiritual personality, Narada Muni. So who you are and who I am and who each of us really is a spiritual identity, a spiritual entity with spiritual personality, as you asked, and a spiritual form. And that's who we are. And what's the value of knowing who we are? We've been discussing. The alternative of not knowing who you are is you accept who you aren't to be who you are. And in that illusion of who you are not, to meet misery after misery, although the expectation is happiness. So leave behind misery and embrace happiness on the spiritual plane. That's why it's important. We want to be happy. That was the introductory remark. We all want happiness, without exception. Anybody else care to unmute yourself and speak something?
Hare Krishna. Can I ask a question?
I'm wide open for any question.
Okay. So you have in this presentation you mentioned that ignorance, like the antidote of ignorance, is knowledge. And based on some previous presentations, I learned that the knowledge is we typically go for this disciplic succession, and we acquire from through that. So
Yes.
what if I have this question of like, hey, I don't trust the disciplic succession because they are humans, and I also don't trust that Vedas may be written by humans. Like, so, and humans have like are
Defects.
fallible.
Humans have defects.
Yeah. So how do, like, if I have such like trust issues, like how do I then gain knowledge?
Well, I would recommend two things. If you don't have faith in, it's a question of faith. There's a whole chapter in Bhagavad Gita called Divisions of Faith, and it's not blind faith, it's very reasonable faith. Everyone has faith in something. So you and each one of us, if we don't have faith in the Vedas, we have faith in something, because faith is intrinsic to the soul. And that faith is going to be, according to Bhagavad Gita, shaped by the modes of nature. So you need to ask yourself, humans they're fallible and influenced by the modes of nature. Is there such a thing? You have to answer this question for yourself. Ask it of yourself. Is there such a thing as an infallible person, or a truth that's beyond fallibility? When I was in college, I distinctly remember, I've shared this hundreds of times, at least 200 times. I had three things that kept me going in transcendental pursuit. One, there is a higher reality. I have faith. There is a higher reality. Besides all this, there's a higher reality. Two, I know that I don't know. And three, I want to know. That's the starting point. Their faith is there is a higher reality, and it is something that I would assume you also, otherwise you wouldn't be here, you'd be doing something else, you want to know. So what is that? And you have that inquisitive spirit. In Sanskrit, it's Brahma Jigyasa. You have that inquisitive spirit, and you start looking at, look at what the things are that you do have faith in. Are they fallible or infallible? And if you do a little careful examination, like let's just say your mind. Well, I don't have, humans are fallible, and who knows, maybe somebody who wrote the Vedas is fallible, and so I don't have faith in the cyclic succession so you have faith in your mind, fallible or infallible? Where are you going to repose your faith? If there is a higher reality, I'll assume, and one more time, you're here because you have that faith, otherwise you'd be off doing something else. So there's a higher reality. I don't have yet strong faith in the Vedas for reasons mentioned, or disciplic succession for reasons mentioned. So I don't have firm faith. I have soft and pliable faith. Well, good news for you. That's standard for people who are beginning in spiritual life. And what's the remedy to make the soft and pliable faith more firm? And the answer is sadhu sangha. But, circle back to the doubt. Well, maybe the sadhu is a fallible person like me. So then why should I have faith in sadhu? You have to have faith in something. And if you put faith in your mind, that's a real loser. So let me find where there are such persons who are sadhu-like. They may not be perfected beings, but if they're sadhu-like, that is, they're attached, like me, to wanting to know. And they're living the life of one who wants to know. And they're very sincere and genuine, as you are sincere and genuine. Otherwise, you wouldn't ask such a question. You wouldn't even be here. So there's sincerity, and I want to associate with other such people. I've heard that the Vedas are infallible because they come from an infallible source. I've heard that the infallible makes an arrangement so that those that don't have contact with him can have contact with him through disciplic succession. I've heard about it. It's right in Bhagavad Gita, and it makes sense that I need to connect with that which is in direct connection with, linked with that infallible source. So let me, then the preliminary faith, soft and pliable faith, is, let me hear in the association of sadhus. We've already defined sadhu. And see what happens. You make a little experiment with just based upon some soft and pliable faith that says, I want to know, and I know that I don't know, and there is a higher reality. And you see what happens as you associate with sadhus. And assuming the association is genuine association, in the course of time, that soft and pliable faith will become a little firmer. You'll get some realization which makes your faith more firm. It's the gentle, gradual, natural process. How does that sound? Reasonable?
Yep, that makes sense. Thank you.
It's something like, here's another, it's a very simple metaphor. You got some wet wood over there, like a log. It is kind of wet or soggy. You put it next to a fire. And what's going to happen is it's going to dry out. And then when you have that log that's now dry wood, it's just even near the fire, it's going to get warmer. You put it in the fire and it just ignites. Same for you. Find some fire, find some sadhu sangha fire, and keep close to it. And then gradually, realization, little lights will go on, and you'll understand things more tomorrow than you do today. Based and resting upon faith, but also using your reasoning power, which is limited. Like the other humans are also limited and fallible. But some little lights will go on, and you continue making progress that way. That's the recommendation for the situation you described.
I actually have a question.
Okay.
So Swamiji, you spoke about faith. I believe in faith in higher reality. But my question is, there are certain days, not even days, there are moments in the entire day wherein you question the faith you have in higher reality. Sometimes I happen to question myself, like, do I have faith? Like, why do I have faith?
Good.
So why does it happen? I mean, after that moment is passed away, I'm again back to normal. But why does that moment exist? And how should one overcome that?
I think it's good. My position is hitting the pause button, looking inside, and asking those questions may be uncomfortable. But one of the things that asking those questions does is it takes away complacency. One of the mistakes in spiritual advancement is just wanting to be comfortable or complacent or indifferent. So when you ask yourself a question like that, it doesn't have to be a moment. It can be more than a moment, but it's it's an opportunity to wipe the slate clean and do a reality check with, am I in this genuine place or I'm in a blind following place? Am I acting from the heart or am I acting from my habits that are kind of mechanical and not heartfelt? So I don't know about you, but when I go through those and I find other people going through those, it's like, that's good. It's uncomfortable. Maybe it's embarrassing, but it's good. Because when you're on the other side, as you're passing through it and then on the other side, you have a clearer focus on what's really deep inside, again, at the heart level, something that's very meaningful to me. This is my purpose, my mission, my existence, my reality. It doesn't necessarily have to be self-doubt. It can just be, I like the phrase, pause button. Is this really real? Is this really me? It's Brahma Jigyasa. It's good. Now, something that will be important for you and all of us is same as the prior question. Stay always in good association. Supposing you get in that space and you get a little stuck in that space, you have wholesome persons to go to, and you bring your reality check to them and saying whatever you need to say. And I'm feeling uncomfortable. And what's going on here? What's your advice for me? Please give me some wisdom. And then you listen carefully, not just blindly accept, but that kind of sadhu sangha opportunities are very, very valuable, whether you're asking that question or not, but particularly when you're asking that question, very valuable, because those are good moments. You will find, most likely, as time passes, those moments will become less frequent, but they'll become more refocusing your lens than like feeling guilty or disturbed that, I shouldn't have thoughts like that. It's just a refocus.
Thank you. Yeah, that actually helped. I mean, I could think it through. So yeah.
Okay, good. Good. How are we doing out there? Anyone else? We have 6 minutes by the clock.
So there is a question that got posted on the chat. So Varad Ratnakar, why don't you ask directly? Are you not in a position to ask? You can unmute and speak. Is it not possible? Otherwise, I'll read it. Okay, good evening, Maharaj. I am a kind of a person who thinks a lot over every small and big thing I keep on thinking. When I started chanting Mahamantra, I used to feel calmer and I used to skip thinking for a while. But over a period of time, it seems like I have learned to continue thinking while chanting. This is disturbing me. Am I doing it correctly or am I missing something?
Am I doing it correctly or am I what?
Missing something.
Missing something. Well, I don't know who asked the question, but it could be practically anybody on this call or this class during this class. That is to say, Manoratena sati dhavato bahi. We're all quite familiar with mano rata, being carried by the rata or the chariot of the mana, the mind. Very common. Just like go back to that slide. Well, we'll go here. The slide with the pyramid. So these different parts of the holistic picture of who we are, and the mind is a big one. The mind is a really big one. The mind is a really big one. Are you doing something wrong that being carried by the chariot of the mind? Well, the one answer is everyone's doing it, but another answer is yes, it's something wrong. Now, whoever is asking the question, find out from Partha how you can find via online Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 6, verses 3 through 5. You get some important lessons about the mind. And basically, it's don't listen to the mind. So are you doing something wrong listening to the mind? Don't listen to the mind. It'll carry you in uncomfortable places. So why, your question wasn't why was it before I was more involved in thoughts over small, big, and medium things. With chanting, it subsided, and now I'm doing both at the same time. It's inattention. When you were being attentive because it was nice and lovely and new, then it was easy to stop the mind because the mind was absorbed in the sound. Now there's both things going on. How to curb that mind from not doing two things, but to one thing. There's many techniques and so forth. My very simple advice for an exchange like this is, according to Bhaktisiddhanta, when the ear is engaged in hearing the sound of the mantra, transcendental sound, the mind becomes conquered. The restless, meandering, going here and there mind becomes conquered by the ear, which or means by its sound, by the ear hearing the sound. So let your attention, that's another faculty at your discretion. You can let your attention go to the thoughts in your mind, or you can let your attention go to the sound. Direct with your intelligence. Look at that pyramid. With your intelligence, you direct the mind to hear the sound. So that's three. That's intellect, mental, and bodily. So it starts with the faculty of the ear. It conquers the mind. Powered by the intelligence, it says, my dear ear, hear this sound. My dear mind, become peaceful in that sound vibration. You don't even have to tell the mind, but you can do that too. And then that restlessness of the mind becomes conquered. It doesn't happen with a snap of the fingers because, per your report, you're accustomed to, it's a habit to go for rides in the chariot of the mind. And you're not the only one. So practice, cultivate it different. Cultivate hearing the sound. When you're chanting mantra, you have one business, hear the sound, and the mind becomes conquered. And when the mind becomes conquered, it becomes stunned. And that's the state of peacefulness that you want. The mind won't disturb you. And then spiritual happiness arises because it's already there, it's just covered by all these other things. Hey, look at that. It's 7:15, which is 8:15 your time. I'm in central USA. So, Partha, I think it's the 8:15 bell is ringing.
Yes. I just wanted to very quickly check if there is any burning question or not. Otherwise, we'll close the session.
Sure.
Any burning
Anyone?
question? All right. I will invite Shivani to close the session.
Yes. Thank you, Partha. And thank you, Swamiji, for the immense knowledge you shared today on happiness, on a very different perspective of happiness in midst of this material world. So I hope everyone has a lot of things to take today. Some people can even implement them. Like I would surely probably implement it. And the most intriguing thing to me in this session was how you explained that the root cause of suffering is desire, but what leads to desire is ignorance. So one can keep in mind these things. And also to add on, and once again, thank you, Swamiji. And to add on, we do have every Thursday spiritual sessions addressed by Dr. Partha Biswas. Uh, so he addresses questions, uncommon answers to common questions. And it happens every Thursday, same time. And the Zoom link is the same one you used to log in here. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, just drop in the chat and probably I'll get back to you regarding the session. And thank you once again, everyone, for attending the session.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Glad to be with you. Look forward to our next time together.
So hopefully our next session will be in person because fall semester onwards, the universities are opening up. So I really look forward to now having His Holiness Romapada Swami in person going forward. So thank you so much for coming.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.